Again, my name is Brett Siegel, filling in for Gary Franchi. I always broadcast to you live from my safe space down here in northern Florida, where I'm always free from your bigotry, racism, hatred, microaggressions, and patriarchy. Now, while President Trump races to secure peace between Russia and Ukraine, NATO leaders are beating the drums of war louder than ever. From inside the International Media Center in The Hague, Gary Franchi is there covering the moment when rhetoric turned to madness. Zelenskyy warning of the Russians' attack on NATO soil, billions pledged for a permanent military buildup, Ukraine's path to NATO declared irreversible. Not really. Every word, every pledge, every promise pushes us closer to World War III, and they're doing it with your money, your future, your children's lives on the line. This is not diplomacy. This is provocation disguised as protection. Now stay with me. While President Trump's Made in America agenda eyeing import tariffs, the race for secure domestic supply just hit overdrive. Copper is charging back towards last year's record, hovering around $4.85 a pound as global stockpiles scrape 15-year lows. Enter Giant Mining Corp, ticker BFGFF in the US and BFG in Canada. Their 9,800-acre Majuba Hill project sits in mining-friendly Nevada, right beside a highway, rail, power, gas, and fiber. Recent drilling delivered a 170-foot copper zone averaging 0.4, capped by a 10-foot break running a 4.4% copper, the kind of punch majors pay billions for. Engineering firm RESPEC is already fast-tracking in the first NI 43101 resource. So Majuba could leap from a drill rig development while rivals get tangled up in new red tape. In a super cycle where projects that move fast win, Giant Mining checks every box. Discover more at giantminingcorp.com, on the OTC at BFGFF in the US and BFG in Canada. Let's watch the man himself on the ground at NATO. Let's take it to Gary.
I'm Gary Franchi, Chief White House Correspondent for the Next News Network, reporting once again from the NATO Summit in The Hague. It's a brisk, overcast evening, and the rain has eased, but the atmosphere is still heavy. Behind me, the entrance to the International Media Center remains abuzz with reporters from every continent. And just minutes from now, President Trump is expected to land right here in the Netherlands. Now, this is our final dispatch of the day before we return to the White House secured hotel. And what we've witnessed inside these walls today has been nothing short of astounding. While President Trump is fighting to secure peace between Russia and Ukraine, NATO leaders, many whom have never worn a uniform, they're fanning the flames with aggressive rhetoric, and it mirrors the very provocations that Vladimir Putin has cited to justify his invasion of that nation. And no voice was louder today than Zelenskyy himself. President Zelenskyy, he wasted no time warning NATO leaders that Russia is preparing new military operations, not just in Ukraine, but on NATO territory itself. And he demanded 5% GDP defense spending across Europe to counter what he called Russia's expanding illusion of conquest. Take a look.
Russia is even planning new military operations on NATO territory, meaning your countries, and this war is now on in Ukraine, and it's to get prepared, well, to be ready. No doubt we must stop Putin now and in Ukraine, but we have to understand that his objectives reach beyond Ukraine. European countries need to increase defense spending. We believe that 5% of GDP is the right level. A united Europe can create a defense capability that will destroy Russia's illusion that war with Europe could bring it anything. To kill that illusion faster, we must take away Russia's ability to continue this war against Ukraine with impunity.
Now, what's alarming here isn't just the warning, it's the escalation. This is the very talk that convinced Putin that NATO is not just a defense alliance, but an offensive threat. Zelenskyy continued accusing NATO and EU member states of indirectly fueling Russia's war machine. Components from NATO countries, he claimed, are still showing up inside Russian drones and missiles. Roll it.
please make sure your countries and your companies are not helping Russia or its bodies in any way. This is crucial, really. And there is no significant Russian weapon today that is produced without components, without equipment or materials from other countries, sadly, including some from Europe and NATO. Yes, of course. And this must stop. Such components can be found in every Russian missile, in most of their drones, and in military vehicles. And it's not just China. Also, Taiwan and some of these parts come from the European countries and from the United States. And every single component or machine tool delivered to Russia's defense sector helps prolong the war and is a crime against peace.
Now, that's a bombshell admission. If true, it would suggest that while governments talk peace, their industries may be prolonging the bloodshed. And Zelensky is using that to demand total severance from Russia, economically and militarily. And he didn't stop there. Zelensky drove the threat home, warning that aiding Russia, even inadvertently, is a threat to every NATO country's way of life. Watch.
Every scheme that helps them build Shahid drones or any other tools of killing is not just aiding a war against us, it's a threat to you and to the way of life that millions in our countries value deeply. Please, let's make sure that our defense potential and the potential of our partners works for our peace, not for Russia's madness.
This isn't just a Ukrainian war, according to Zelensky. This is a war for the West's soul, and he's framing it as a moral crusade that leaves no room for neutrality. And standing beside him, the NATO Secretary General announced that Ukraine's path to NATO is not just open, it's irreversible. And he touted tens of billions in new European and Canadian support. Watch.
Decided that there is this irreversible path for Ukraine into NATO. We're building that bridge as we speak. I made yesterday an announcement that European and Canadian allies have now pledged more than 35 billion euros in support for Ukraine, which is more than last year, because last year, for the full year, it was over 50 billion. Now, before the 1st of July, it is already 35 billion. So we can safely assume that for the full year, it will be more than last year.
This is what Putin feared the most. Ukraine fully absorbed into NATO. And the bridge that Rutte says is being built, from Putin's perspective, it's a runway for conflict. And Rutte didn't hold back. He called recent Russian attacks on civilians unacceptable and labeled Russia's war as unprovoked, igniting even more resolve among NATO members. Watch this.
Because what we have seen over the last couple of weeks is unacceptable. It is Russia starting 3.5 years ago this totally unprovoked war against Ukraine. The full onslaught, they already started in 2014, but the full onslaught starting in February 2022. And now the last couple of weeks, these indiscriminate attacks on innocent civilians living in cities, living in communities in Ukraine, who go about their daily lives and get killed or seriously wounded because of these Russian drones and whatever. So this is terrible. So everybody is very motivated. Please understand that.
But again, there is a dangerous loop here. Every word of condemnation is justified, but every pledge, every commitment also hardens Russia's posture. We're walking a razor-thin line between deterrence and escalation. European Council President Antonio Costa, he framed Russia's invasion as a threat to global peace, not just in Europe, but even in the Pacific, calling out its alliances with North Korea and Iran. Watch.
Russia's invasion of Ukraine remains a major threat for global peace in the world, because this invasion is undermining the international rules-based order, because Russia is an intercontinental country threatening Europe, but also the Pacific region, and because Russia is acting in alliance with countries like North Korea or Iran.
This is NATO stretching its footprint. and its rhetoric, from Ukraine all the way to Asia, a widening front that feeds Putin's narrative of encirclement. And finally, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced a massive 150 billion euro loan fund to help Ukraine expand its defense industry. Take a look.
Stand by Ukraine from the very first day on, and you can count on us also for the future. We have just discussed how important it is for Ukraine to invest in the extraordinary, agile and innovative Ukrainian defense industry. Therefore, we have designed a funding program of 150 billion euros, we call it SAFE, where member states, but also Ukraine and other partners, can take these loans to invest in the Ukraine defense industry, which has shown its ability to innovate, to produce fast and reliably at scale. We can learn a lot from you, what that is concerned, but in this way we can support you also for the survival of Ukraine.
150 billion euros. That's not just support, that's permanent entrenchment. And you can hear the military helicopters above me. And the defense industry build out, it ensures the war, or at least preparations for more, continues for years to come. Now, President Trump is on his way, and make no mistake, he is arriving at a summit that is speaking the language of war, while he alone speaks the language of peace through strength. While NATO leaders draft bridges to permanent military integration, Trump is trying to build a bridge to peace. And that is the great divide that is now staring us all in the face. For the Next News Network, standing at the edge of diplomacy, I'm Gary Franchi, and we'll see you tomorrow.
This Russia-Ukraine war is such a strange war. We're talking about two deeply corrupt countries. And, you're not hearing a lot from Putin, but seems like I'm hearing from Zelenskyy every other 2 seconds. And all he's doing is going around the world, pissing off all the world leaders. And then we go to NATO, and Ukraine isn't even a member of NATO, yet he gets to stand up here and stick out his hand just like every other country who is a part of NATO. And somehow he always takes the stage. He always steals the show. Zelenskyy. This is your money funding forever wars. But it's your children who are going to fight them. Your future mortgaged for military machinery that enriches contractors enriches contractors while impoverishing nations. NATO was created to prevent World War III, not to provoke it. But today's leadership have forgotten that mission. They're drunk on expansion, intoxicated by integration, addicted to American dollars, globalism. Zelenskyy demands 5% while American cities are crumbling. Europe pledges billions while their people freeze. And Putin? He watches every move, every expansion, every irreversible declaration as a validation of his worst fears. He's probably sitting there in the Kremlin like, idiots. Only Trump stands between this madness and global catastrophe. He alone speaks peace in a room full of warmongers. Question for you. Should America withdraw from NATO if they keep pushing for war with Russia? Yes or no? Sound off below. And if you want to support real journalism that exposes the military-industrial complex, grab our gear at shop.nextnewsnetwork.com. That's shop.nextnewsnetwork.com.